Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome
Good
to
evening.
The 20, the weekly Premier League show. I say weekly, it's not been weekly recently because there's not been Premier League games apart from last weekend when everyone else was in the FA Cup. Burnley were being boring against Watford, and we're not going to talk about that because who gives a toss? 0-0 draw, sod it. Let's get on to Tuesday. By the way, I'm joined this evening by Mr. Richard Williams, Richard Agenda Williams, and Cal Copites and Gobshites Blundell. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Oh dear, that wasn't a very enthusiastic response. Let's start with Tuesday, the 8th of February, and we'll start with Newcastle United 3, Everton 1.
Cal, do you want to go first to talk about this?
It was a very bad performance.
Well, that is a level of insight I have never seen before in commentary or punditry.
I don't really. I've moved my mind away from that result, but it was typical Everton. We played three at the back, didn't work at all. We got overrun in midfield. The atmosphere from Newcastle was electric, and yeah, some of their new signings played. They played really well. Trippier scored. Chris Wood really gave us troubles, and Bruno Guimaraes came on, was very good. It was a poor performance.
Hold on, Cal. I've just been slated in the chat. Good evening, by the way, Jack Lee. Cheers, mate, for your positivity. Chris Baker's just told me that was Watford's first clean sheet in the last 6 managers, so I apologise, Chris. Perhaps if we had your levels and depth of knowledge on this channel, we wouldn't be in the mud so much. Sorry, back to Everton getting battered by Newcastle.
Yeah, like I said, we played three at the back. It was more of a 5 back when we lost the ball and then 3 when we had the ball. It didn't really work, and I think he's learned from that with obviously after the result, which we'll get to, but it was just another Everton performance where you look at it and when someone presses us, we just give up because the players have no fight. But yeah, we were battered. Newcastle's atmosphere was electric, and yeah, I'm pretty sure they're probably going to stay up, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
3 wins on the bounce.
Yep. Next game of that evening was West Ham 1, Watford 0. The mighty Irons sort of trying to tell everyone that they want to be a top 4 team. What do you think about that, Rich?
I think they're how can I say it? They're on the verge of top 4. I know they're in the top 4 and then they're out the top 4. I think they're like most of the teams around them who, look really good, really solid, but it doesn't, a player or two change, something goes against them and they do look a lot more vulnerable than the sides who are, I guess, in the top 3. But it's going to be a really fascinating run into 4th place. I mean, Watford, I think, are a shambles. They look to me this season that they've actually got some good players, but they look like a primary school team. They've just looked like they've got players and they run around a lot enthusiastically, but they leave like 20-metre gaps.
That Roy Hodgson is regretting coming out of retirement and sort of sullying his legacy? I know that Roy Hodgson's had a little bit of an up-down career, but I've always respected the man. I laughed my head off when he was England manager because he was playing favourites with everyone. But he didn't need to come back out of retirement. He didn't need a paycheck, but he did it anyway. But whatever. I don't underestimate West Ham at all. I've been waxing lyrical about West Ham all season. Put two of their players in my mid-season team of the season. I could have arguably put Jared Bowen in there, but I went for their left back and the right back instead. I just think they're an excellent team. Do I think they'll finish 4th? No. I still don't think they'll finish 4th. Even though, at the minute, Arsenal, Manchester United, Tottenham, and who am I missing out of that?
Wolves
maybe. So there's like there's 5 teams in contention for that 4th spot. If Manchester United don't get that 4th spot, it will be the biggest. Seriously, it'll be a bigger failing than when they finished. What did they finish? 13th or something ridiculous? No, that was Chelsea. United finished like 7th or 8th, didn't they? A couple of years ago. But whatever. I desperately want West Ham to get that 4th spot. I just don't think they will get it. And we'll get onto that a little bit more later on as to why.
It's almost like no one wants the 4th spot. I mean, the levels that they go to drop points between them, those teams, is staggering. I mean, Wolves have probably been the most solid of them all recently. But even they lost at home to Arsenal, a game we'll come to shortly.
Listen, Jack Lee, Tottenham are a horrible club. They shouldn't even be a Premier League club. Tottenham should be like in the French league or something. They might win a trophy then. Let's get on to the last game of the Tuesday, which was Burnley 1, Manchester United 1. Obviously, again, Manchester United social media oik, Mark Goldbridge, was claiming that this is a must-win game for United. United will go to Turf Moor and batter them. Burnley is showing a bit of fight, a bit of spirit. Burnley is showing a little bit of what they've shown for 8 years in the Premier League.
Yeah,
they're down but not out.
Yeah, but I think they're starting from they normally get a couple of results early on. So Burnley are normally fighting like this from 17th spot. I think fighting like this from 20th spot is a lot harder. They did show fight, but I think Paul Scholes was the one who best. I think it was actually not after this game. It was probably after the Southampton game, where he just said that United look like a team who aren't coached. They look like a team who, in his words, they look like a team who have a director of football who's only coached 2 seasons in the last 12. Is coaching them. They don't do anything as a team. They're just a couple of fast players up front and an experienced old goal scorer, and then everyone kind of running around. I mean, you watch some of their defending for goals in the last against Burnley and Southampton, and they don't have a defence in a line. You've got one defender on the right, 5 yards ahead of the right centre-back, 3 yards ahead of the left centre-back, 3 yards ahead of the left-back. They're just not organised. They're a mess.
All right, okay. Let me ask you one thing, Rich, right? In the many conversations that we all have, we've all condemned Watford. We've all said Watford are adrift, they're getting relegated, all the rest of it. Watford aren't bottom of the Premier League. Why is it that we haven't yet condemned Burnley, but we've already condemned Watford?
Well, because partly I think it's because Burnley just don't seem to ever, they don't seem to sign many players. They don't seem to do that much. And I think we're probably all felt that they're going to go down every year for about 8 years. So we don't condemn them. I think probably the same way I didn't really condemn Bournemouth when they went back down, because I never felt that they'd really established themselves and always felt they might go down. And I always felt like that for Burnley. And, it's been more a positive thing that Burnley have stayed up so many years. I mean, it's been a huge positive thing that they've done that, considering the resources they have.
Yeah.
So
and what about Manchester United? Why are Manchester United absolutely just all over? They are an absolute closet case. They've had
United
big problems.
They've had big problems
at the club.
With better players.
Yeah, but
United
that's
and Watford
the thing, though,
with
Rich.
better players.
They've spent $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
And the wages that they pay, I think they've got 2 or 3 players over £500,000 a week, and they're not even top 4.
Because they are a team who hasn't had a football person running them for a decade. Well, since Ferguson left, they've been run by bankers.
Well, this is 9 years now since United won the league, I think.
And they've been run by bankers. They've had managers who come in with no ability to actually really shape the club, because the club's been run by bankers. They sign players because they don't want City to sign them, or because they've got the most, social media followers, and they worry more about the launch video and how many people are going to hit it and how many people are going to buy kits with that player's name on than they do how that player fits in. They just have no plan. They are going to become what they could be. They are going to have to go back to the drawing board. They need a new CEO. They need a new football league. They need new coaches at all levels. They need to invest in their infrastructure. They need to buy players who actually are bought for a system. And,
hold on, no. That's not the United way. The United way is promote youth and get a lot of followers on Instagram. I think Bournemouth survived about 4 years in the Premier League on Cartier. Burnley really are the miracle club. When you look at all these clubs, when you look at clubs on zero budget, we've seen QPR, Watford, Sheffield United, there's so many, Swindon back in the day, Ipswich, Nottingham Forest at one point, Leeds to an extent now, although they have spent some more money. It's not like Premier League winning money. And Burnley have just survived like 8 years. And now, back in the day when me and Rich were whippersnappers, Burnley were like an absolute banter club. We used to go to Turf Moor and beat them like 6-0 in Division 2. And
well, Sean Goater always used to score.
Sean Goater would get like 7 hat-tricks per game against them. Yeah. Anyway, so let's move on to the Wednesday night. Manchester City 2, Brentford 0. We did exactly what we needed to do against them. Raheem Sterling got us into the game by getting us a penalty. And we just went on to sort of second gear win it. I don't want to say much more than that. Rich, have you got anything to contribute to that?
Yeah, I mean, it was not particular. It was a dull game. We never looked like we weren't going to win it, but we never looked like we were going to run away. It was just solid. It was just one of the results we got to grind out to get the 90 points plus we need to win the league.
Cal, have you got anything to say? Did you see any of the City-Brentford game, or were you bored to tears by it?
I watched the game, and I thought, to be honest, again, Brentford played well considering it's City. You know, to only scored 2 goals. I thought they defended pretty well, but City's quality just showing. That's what champions do, isn't it? You know, that's why he's all the best team in the world, in my opinion. Because when the going gets tough,
But we didn't beat Palmeiras to win the Club World Championship. No.
But you don't cop out and give up, or you keep going, and you kept going, and the goals came. You know, I thought Raheem Sterling was good. I think to win the penalty, I thought he was good, but. Yeah, good performance, I think, and that's what champions do, You can't always win 8-7, 6-5-0. Sometimes it's 2-0, 1-0, but...
Thank you for the compliment, Cal. Thank you for the compliment.
And that was their...
Some people think that you hate Manchester City, Cal, so thank you for the compliment.
That was their 5th loss on the trot as well. So, I know they got a point since then, but I think Brentford are really now in the mix for
Do you reckon
relegation.
They can get sucked in? I haven't included
I
them
think
yet.
they are.
I think
they're already in. I mean, Newcastle go above them with a win this week. So Brentford are already in the mix.
True.
No
okay,
question.
I'll give you that, Rich. I'll give you that. Right.
No
Norwich 1, Crystal Palace 1. Norwich, you've got to beat the teams around you, especially at home. You've got to draw.
Should have lost as well, to be honest. I thought Palace were better, and Zaha missed a penalty and also missed the sitter as well. But his goal was absolutely incredible. Norwich scored early, but Palace took the momentum off Norwich and just played well, but didn't get the win. Palace were the better team, in my opinion. They controlled more of the ball. But so that's what Vieira's sides have done this season.
What do you think about Vieira? How highly do you rate him?
To be honest, it's a weird one because I thought he was going to be the first to go. And because obviously he didn't have a good time in France.
Not when Steve Bruce is a manager.
But I didn't think he was going to do great. He did poor in France, but he's come to England and he's playing a style which is usually hard to drill into a team. Certainly a team that's played so defensive. He's drilled in an attacking style, and they're good to watch. And I rate him quite highly. And if he can keep doing what he's doing at Palace, I can see him getting a pretty good job after Palace because he's doing a very good job.
Do you not think that Conor the GOAT Gallagher has got a lot to do with that?
He is very good, but I think you've also got to look at it, takes them, the manager's still got to get the results, and he's got the results, They've beat us, they've done well against a lot of the big teams. They've come up short against a lot of the big teams, but they still play good football.
And they let about, 9 players go in the summer or something? It was a crazy amount.
Yeah, 9 players, yeah.
Yeah, it was just like a really old squad. He, changed it round. And he's been given a bit of time. And I reckon the one thing Palace always have in their favour is, I reckon it's a pretty, and I don't mean this in a bad way about Palace, but it's a pretty nasty place to go and play. I don't think it's
you can't see the pitch for a start. When you're sat in the away end, you can't see the pitch. And I've been there about 3 times, and I've not seen one bit of the game. I don't know why I keep going. And let's move on anyway. I think with Vieira, for me, and I've said this a couple of weeks ago, Vieira, the jury's still out on Vieira because he's got a lot of loan signings at Palace. We don't know what Vieira the recruiter's like. We don't know what Vieira the buying of players is like. He's got a lot of loan signings and a lot of good loan signings. Whether he's had a say in that or not might go in his favour. I don't know. But let's talk about Manchester City's next opposition in the Premier League. And I fucking hate them because they play the worst football ever on the planet. And if they come to Fortress Etihad and beat us, I'll be so annoyed because they're shit. Tottenham bottle Spurs 2, Southampton 3.
Well, people talked about this game afterwards like it was a late steal by Southampton, but Southampton pretty dominated the game. I mean, they had the shots on, the corners, the shots on target. I think they even dominated possession in this game. And Southampton have had a very, very good couple of weeks. They've played City, they've played United, they've played Spurs, and they've really boosted their, how people see them. I think the fullbacks pushing up really high, and very good dead ball play. I think they're coming good. I think they're organised. I think they play as a team. I think the manager's smart, and I think they went Spurs. They were the better team. Yes, they had that kind of, was it 1 minute 30 seconds late on where they turned a losing game into a winning game, but
Yep.
Good performance, and it was good to see. I mean, if they'd got a few more results earlier, they might be entering into that conversation for fifth place with the likes of Wolves.
I agree wholly with Jack Lee in the comments there. Tottenham are a pointless club and they need to be liquidated. Fact. Aston Villa 3, Leeds United 3. Have the wheels come off the Steven Gerrard hype train?
This was, for me, one of the games of the season. I thought it was brilliant. It was fast-paced. And I to be honest, I think Steven Gerrard's not all that, is he? I think there was a lot of hype when he first came to the Prem because he won the league, obviously, with Rangers. Took it off Celtic, who had dominated Scotland for a few years, and he'd won the league. But he's come to the Prem. He had a good start, but yeah, it's just not there. And I think, they took Digne off us, and I don't think Digne's doing great for them, to be honest. And they were playing well. Coutinho and Ramsey were linking up well, but then Leeds, man, they're not having the best of the season, and they haven't shown the fight they showed last year, but they showed the fight and it was working. But a point for them was important. It was more of a 2 points lost for Villa and a point gain for Leeds. And I think Villa are a weird club because they've spent a lot of money. And I know they sold Jack Grealish, but they've still spent a lot of money in 2 back-to-back windows, and they're not really showing anything for it. And I know Everton don't show anything for it, but we've spent money. But when could FFP end up getting involved with Villa? You never know. They're spending a lot of money the last couple of, I think that's 3 years where they spent quite a bit. And they're not, 11th, 12th, I think they are in the league. They really need to start pushing for Europe soon, mate. And that's my opinion. And I think Leeds played well, but they definitely didn't keep it up, did they, on the weekend?
I think Gerrard, it was a very good job for him to take because Villa were massively underperforming. They had a much better, squad and everything than their level of performance this season so far. So and he came in late enough in the season that they were never going to expect him to get into Europe this year. So I think he had a bit of a free hit. Leeds absolutely desperately need Bamford back because when I watch them, they're like some people said that City this season were going to be able to dominate games and then they just wouldn't score because we haven't got number 9. But we've got such quality players that it doesn't actually matter we don't have that number 9 at the moment in most games because, whether it's Bernardo or Foden or Sterling or Mahrez, they all get goals. Leeds are like that, but they're not getting enough goals from the other players. They're actually getting good possession in the opponent's half, but they just desperately need Bamford to, come in and score 5 or 10 goals between now and the end of the year, and they'll be very safe. But without that, I know they scored 3 in this game. To me, that they're in danger because they're just not turning possession and some good football into goals, and they aren't that solid at the back either. They've had a few changes at the back. I think they had Cooper out for quite a while, and they just haven't. They've just looked like City against Leicester a couple of years ago too often this season.
You say about Bamford, but how long's Bamford been out, Rich?
Most of this season he seems to have been
if Bamford's been out most of this season, why is Bielsa not come up with a different strategy?
Well,
this is the difference between an actual club and a make-believe club. Like if Kevin De Bruyne's out for 3 months, Manchester City don't suddenly go into a relegation battle.
Yeah, no, they've
had a January transfer window to address the problem as well.
Yeah,
And they're
Yeah,
not, and
no,
they're not,
I don't know
they're
that
not
they can
breadline
afford
rich.
to.
They're not
I don't know that
breadline.
they can afford to.
Burnley,
I don't know.
listen, Burnley were able to get Waghorst in, you know.
Yep.
So they're not. Leeds are not a breadline club.
I think their owners just think that they're good enough, and I think for me, I think it comes to a point. Yes, they do play fun football. It's fun to watch for a neutral. It is, it's up there with some of the best in the league, but they're not getting results. They're getting 1 point every now and again. They lost 7-0 to City. They're suffering big losses, and when is it going to be enough? And I know Bielsa has done a good job there getting them back to the Prem, but he has to change something because they can't keep playing like they're playing, because they will go down if they're playing like they're playing, because they lose so many points because, certain games have certain styles and they play the same style in every game, and you just can't do that because in the Premier League it just doesn't work. And I think second season syndrome certainly, certainly proven, fact that it does happen. And I think Leeds need to change something quick, whether that's the manager or something, because it's not going well for them.
And it's a funny Premier League. Whenever I look at the table down the bottom, say we're talking like this, we're talking Palace really good and Leeds having a mare, but Leeds win the game in hand, they're level with Palace. And yet, in my mind, Leeds are having a terrible season, Palace are having a great season. I think that's the fascinating thing. I mean, if you actually look at the points, you now see like Newcastle. Yeah, they're within a couple of points of Palace if they win their game in hand that they've got on Palace. So there could be a real surprise getting sucked into relegation. If a team in 12th, 13th, 14th goes and loses three games on the trot, they could be sucked right in because, it is fascinating down there. And there's some teams I think we think of having a good season who are only just above it, and other teams we think like an Everton or a Leeds having a terrible season, but they're only a win away from being there with Palace and Villa.
See, the thing is, right? Can I just say, like, look, I'm Daddy Beaver. I'm not saying you're wrong, but Watford, Burnley, Newcastle, Norwich, Everton, Leeds, Brentford. There's like 16 clubs that could go down that everyone keeps saying. Only 3 can go down. So I think if everyone was playing at the peak of their game and Leeds carried on playing the way they're going, then there'd definitely be a certainty to go down. But I just think because there's worse clubs and more inconsistent clubs, that they'll be safe this season.
Yeah. And I think
the same for Brentford as well. I think Brentford will just about scrape it this season, but go down next season.
And I think those people over in Trafford will be very relieved they've got 40 points because, I think they're probably safe now, but the way they're playing, they'd get sucked in from the top half if they weren't careful.
Right, on to Thursday with the kings of the absolute candle lighting. Leicester lost away from home at Candlefield, Clownfield, whatever you want to say, to Liverpool 2-0. Liverpool, greatest team in the world, apart from Chelsea.
Copites are gobshites.
Copites are gobshites. Can I just ask you, by the way, Palmeiras, is that what this kid that's the new City Sergio Aguero replacement plays for?
He plays for a team in Argentina.
I don't know. I don't give a shit. They're all the same to me. They're all the same.
Palmeiras is where Gabriel Jesus
That's it. That's
from.
where I've got him.
Yeah. He came from there. So, they're one of the 3 big Sao Paulo teams.
Exactly, you're sort of stealing my joke there, mate, because I was about to say that Manchester United have got 40 points, so they're just about safe from relegation, which is great for them.
No,
well done.
I think
Champagne
they are
football.
safe.
Anyway, so Liverpool 2, Leicester 0.
It was just, it was a bit like our game at Brentford. I mean, I watched it. It wasn't particularly interesting game. Liverpool were the better side. Leicester are crumbling. Leicester are falling apart. And, I guess we all expected a similar result, and it happened. I think, Burnley gave them a harder game than Leicester. Everyone's gone quiet.
No,
Do you watch it, Cal?
We're still here.
To be honest, I don't really think it's that much of an impressive win for Liverpool. And I know that sounds big-headed, obviously. I hate Liverpool, but Leicester just aren't on it this season, and I think Brendan Rodgers is going to go. I can't see him staying there much longer. I think his time's come to an end. And I think it's just, I think desperation's sinking in for Leicester right now. And it looks like he's lost the dressing room because usually, they've had little bad stints in previous years coming to the end of the season. Not usually, because let's be real, it's January, February, still pretty early. There's still 3 months left to go, really. And it's gone wrong the last couple of months for him. And it's very rare that happens until it's time for him to go. And look, Liverpool, they did what they're supposed to do and they beat Leicester. That's what they're supposed to do, and they did it well, to be fair. 22 shots, they did it well. Can't have a go, they did it well.
Yeah, I'm over talking about Leicester City these days, and I'm also over talking about Liverpool. Liverpool did what they needed to do. Leicester have just fallen off a cliff completely. I mean, after that game, after the Liverpool game, I think Leicester were down in 12th. I just think 12th.
Well,
for Leicester
if
City
you look
is
at
a massive
Leicester,
underachievement.
a few losses on the trot, and Newcastle and Everton and Leeds get a win or two, and then Leicester are not actually miles ahead of the relegation battle. In truth,
but they're not going down, Rich. Come on now.
No, I don't think they are, but I'm just saying that they are that disappointing this season that they are not miles off. 3 losses, and they'd be a team you would consider on the top of the relegation battle. So I don't think they'll go down. I think they've got too much quality. But the fact that we're even talking like that says how bad a season it's been for them.
Yep. They've gone a bit too big for the boots, haven't they, in a way, Leicester? Because if you've noticed, a lot of their top players are wanting to leave now. Tielemans rejected his contract extension. You've got a lot of top players. Fofana could leave to go to probably a Chelsea or somewhere in Europe. They lost Mahrez a couple of years back, but that's the problem. Once you start getting into the top 6, they did it 3 years in a row, your top players are going to become unhappy, and they're going to want bigger contracts, and they want to be in the Champions League. And Maddison, Tielemans, they're probably not going to stay there longer. They're really in trouble because, like you said, Rich, if they lose 2-3 games in a row, and us or Leeds win 3 games in a row, they're really in trouble, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it's and you just can't see them turning it around because a lot of their players just, I don't know, their mentality just doesn't seem to be really fighting at the moment, which has been a kind of hallmark of them for the last, since about a year before they won the title. Is that fight and that energy and that enthusiasm, and it just seems to have gone.
Yeah, it has. They need a complete overall refresh, whatever. Brendan Rodgers needs a reset. He's not a terrible manager, but he's not a great manager. He never will be. He probably needs to leave Leicester now and move on and start a different project. He's a good project builder, I'll give him that, but he's not a top clinical manager in the slightest, nowhere near. Wolves 0, Arsenal 1. Arsenal, are they actually? They've not been bad, have they, for the last 3 or 4 months? They've been really quite excellent in some games. They've still got the heads gone moments. Granit Xhaka loves a red card. I know Martinelli got a red card, but I think they've really gone through. They've not gone through it in the way City went through it 20 odd years ago. They've not gone through it the way Everton are going through it right now, but they have gone through the mud a little bit, and they're sort of like they're finding a way out. I'm quite attractive football and quite a good leader they've got in a manager, at least. I think they need an overhaul in the playing staff come the summertime, but
I mean, I think that if you take out the top 3, Wolves and Arsenal have been as good as anyone in the Premier League the last few months, and probably, to be fair, Wolves and Arsenal have probably been better than Chelsea the last few months. I think this game, Wolves could have won this game. I thought it was a fairly even game. I think Wolves slightly edged the possession and the chances. Obviously Arsenal got the goal. Very good win for Arsenal. But Arsenal, we said exactly this when City beat Arsenal away. Arsenal play good football. They've got some good young players, but what really holds them back from being able to really take it up a stage to start considering themselves really competing
let me
with
just
Chelsea.
interject a second. Jack Lee, what I mean is, I'm talking about Arsenal now compared to Arsenal for the first 4 or 5 games of the season. The first 4 or 5 games of the season, they were relegation fodder, mate. They have improved.
Yeah, they have, and they're a good side. I think they can give anyone a game. I think they've got good players, but they lack us. What I think they lack is a spine, and they have, one of the problems Arteta's dealing with is they've had. I saw a thing on this the other day, and it was basically saying they've spent 350 million on players in the last 6 or 7 years that they've then had to sell for about 65 million. I mean, or they've still got, sitting on the bench. So I don't think they're going to battle Chelsea for a while because I think they need a few real experienced stars in the middle.
Like Iwobi. You like Iwobi, don't you, Cal?
Absolutely not. Yeah, but I agree with what you said, Rich. I think, to be honest, I think Arteta's getting there, and I think everyone expected it to not go as long as it has. I think people expected it to just come when they won the FA Cup. I think everyone thought after they won the FA Cup in Arteta's first season, everyone thought, okay, next season they're going to probably get Europe, and it just didn't work out like that. They finished 8th. They played pretty poor, and everyone questioned his job. And this season, we had a terrible start. But they bounced back, and they've bounced back well. They play a lovely brand of football. It's not as good as Pep's style, but he is trying to implement that kind of system and style into Arsenal. I think against the big teams, they try and defend, they try and park the bus, and it doesn't work because the players don't play that football. Yeah. I think they're missing a striker. I think Aubameyang, it was the right decision to get rid of him. His attitude's appalling, and for a captain, you don't want your captain not turning up. Lacazette missed a lot of sitters. They are, for me, what if they get a striker, they really could be in top 4 contention.
And I think, I'd add to that. I think the other thing, and maybe it's just against City, but the player I always think lets them down is Xhaka. They need someone playing that kind of leadership role, which he thinks he's playing, who isn't a red card and a mistake waiting to happen. A real leader in the middle. So if I was Arsenal, I'd be looking for a player, 29, 30-year-old, probably defensive midfield, real leader. Because if they had that real leader on the pitch, I reckon that would take them up to that next level. Because you're spot on, Cal. The football, the movement, the way they're doing it is great, but they just lack the mentality and the organisation against top teams.
I love that line from Jack Lee. Arsenal have less discipline than John Terry at a nightclub. Or Robbie Fowler with a fucking bag of Daz.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's Granit Xhaka all over. He's cost Arsenal against City twice.
But that's what I don't understand. Who's the other
stupidity.
guy? Isn't Granit Xhaka the captain or whatever it is? What's the other club?
Yeah.
What is wrong with my brain right now? There's another club that has a player as a captain that's an absolute liability. Oh, I can't. Whatever. It'll come to me at some point. I'm sure it will. But there's just some. Oh, Manchester United, they do it, don't they? Harry Maguire. Yeah. He's like the worst human being on the planet, but he's club captain. It's like hilarious. I don't understand why these so-called big clubs they just point shotguns at their own feet. Anyway, right. So let's move on from Arsenal and go on to Saturday the 12th of February. Yesterday, in fact, Manchester United won, Southampton won. Another team, by the way, that Mark Goldbridge predict Manchester United would hammer. Now, Mark Goldbridge is the biggest waffle merchant on the planet. We've got Martin Horsfield on this channel, who is right 50% of the time. But it's the other 50% of the time that you're really worried because he digs himself in a trench. But Mark Goldbridge literally is the biggest waffle merchant on the planet. Like, that gold medal of waffle merchant goes to Goldbridge all the time. Anyone who's seen Southampton the last month or two knows that they're not a walk in the park. They're not a rollover. For Southampton to go to Old Trafford and come away with a point, a great result. In fact, that's actually a great result for Manchester United. Actually, I'm gonna declare that Manchester United were lucky to get a point. Yeah. By the way, seeing as I always get told that I never admit to my mistakes, 3 or 4 years ago on the other channel that you all know about, I said that Manchester City should sign Harry Maguire. Yep, I said it. I admit that. I admit fault. The reason why I said we should sign Harry Maguire is because it would have been great. Because that England partnership at the time between Maguire and Stones was really good. That's why I said we should sign Harry Maguire. Okay, so I'll hold my hands up and admit to it. I'm holding my hands up, everybody. There's the stick that you hit me with. There's the stick that you
There's
beat me
nothing
with.
wrong with that, because Maguire, when he plays in a free at the back, is fine, because when you play in a free at the back, that hides how bad you actually are defensively as a centre half, because you had John Stones and usually Kyle Walker helping him. But to be honest, the way I look at it with United, I think Ranieri's, they're playing the football, the build-up's right. They just can't finish the chances, which is crazy, because they have Ronaldo and Cavani, who are two of the best finishers, and they're up there as the two of the best finishers in a long time. So you expect them to be able to finish the chances, but they're not. I think Sancho is starting to come into it a little bit. He started off slow, and I think he's starting to get into his groove a little bit, but they're just not good enough. And I think for a team, they have a lot of money and a lot of work. They do have a lot of top players, but they don't have a system that suits those players. And like you said, they've bought players for the sponsorship deals and the money. They've not really bought players for the team or like a group. Like City have a system.
Yeah, that's the one thing that
they
Voltage gets right. They are social media FC.
Yeah.
Do they train? Have you not seen the photographs that come out of their training sessions?
No, I'm just saying that they can't line up for defense. Like, what amazes me with them, and it happened against City, it happened against Southampton, it happens every week. Most teams manage to actually have their defence in a line so that, they're playing the offside together, that they're organised together, they know where each other are. United struggle to line up their four defenders within a 10-metre.
Well, Manchester United, Rich, don't even understand the offside rule. I mean, they were all pissed off yesterday when Ronaldo and about 7 United players were all offside for their goal.
Yeah.
And they were all complaining to the referee.
6 players, most of them about 2 metres offside, but it still took 90 seconds for VAR to decide they couldn't justify allowing the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was bizarre. I mean, I don't think, if you actually look at that and you actually see the footage, you think one team's defend. You think they've got to be the
United defence.
Team.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're lined up in a perfect defensive formation. But they just. But they're saying this game. Southampton had more shots than United in that game. I think possession was 50-50 at Old Trafford. It's just, it wasn't Southampton getting lucky. Even 2 years ago when United had a mare, teams sometimes went there and just were clinical. But at the moment, you go there and a team like Southampton can match United, step for step, have the possession, have the shots and come away with a draw and maybe feel a bit disappointed they didn't do better.
It's that midfield, isn't it, Rich? Manchester United's midfield, considering Pogba was 100 million, Bruno was 50 million, Fred was 50 million. Fred didn't play yesterday, but that's a lot of money on midfield. And you look at it, for me, Bruno Fernandes he's a good footballer, but where he's not a good number 10, because when he plays in that 10 position, he can't roam the midfield like he's supposed to. He just runs off and goes wild, and it leaves.
He plays like me on FIFA at the minute. I
don't know what you're saying though. I get what you're saying,
usually,
but Cal just said that. Cal, you just singled out the Manchester United midfield, but I'm sorry, they've got Cavani, Ronaldo. Rashford doesn't look like he wants to play football anymore. There's more problems at Manchester United than just McTominay and Fred. Yeah, they're not good enough for Manchester United. They're not good enough for the top 6. But Harry Maguire has stopped wanting to be a defender. Phil Jones a couple of weeks ago came back and shown them all what they claim it is to play the Manchester United way. And look, these are all silly things, but when Manchester United came out on the pitch and Phil Jones was in the starting 11, he was doing that, he was jumping up, he was like amped up for the game and ready. The rest of them all looked like they were sulking because they weren't allowed to have the mobile phones while they're playing. There is just something sincerely stinky about everything about that club.
Do you know what? Last season, Cavani papered over a lot of cracks for him. I think, and I'll admit, I didn't think Cavani was going to be a great signing for them, but his work rate and his passion and his goals as well. He got some good goals last season. I think that papered over a crack, and I think that enabled their attack because, in a way, the attack should come through the midfield and a really quality midfield, and they lack it. But Cavani's work rate and his quality actually hid that lack and actually enabled Fernandes to have a much better season.
Let this sink in, Rich. The wages that they pay their midfield are more than the entirety of City squad. Let that sink in.
Yeah. Their wages, their business model, their everything. It's an absolute shambles, absolute shambles of a club at the moment.
We can all agree, guys. Manchester United, when you look at them, like, that squad should be doing something. But like I said, everyone was so quick to jump on Ollie and say he's shit, he's a PE teacher, he's this, he's this, he's this. He had something going, and me and you speak every day, don't we? And we said it perfectly. The best thing to do was to bring Ranić in and let Ranić help Ollie. But they
shouldn't have got rid of one to suit the other. They should have stuck with Ollie till the end of the season with Ranić's guidance. Yeah, but whatever. Yeah, I don't care. Let them sink into the mud. I don't give a shit. It's Manchester United.
But the one thing they prove though is that there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, Pep's not a great manager. Anyone could manage with that amount of money." United are what prove that is a load of rubbish, because United and City have spent a very, very similar amount of money, whether you look over 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. In fact, 1 year we spent a lot less, and we've spent slightly less than them. And United show what a lot of money with bad management achieves. City show what a lot of money with good management achieves. So, and that's the difference.
Absolutely. And let's add on to that figure, Rich, that probably there's going to be a lot of clubs rebuilding this summer, and I do believe that City in some way will be rebuilding as well. But
will United.
No. This is what I'm saying, Rich. Manchester City have spent less than Manchester United to be 4 or 5 positions better than them in the league, and Manchester United will have to spend the same amount again to get anywhere near City. So realistically,
and if you valued the squads today, I'd wager our squad is worth, on the market 400 or 500 million more than theirs, because we spent well.
Absolutely. And Chris
I
Baker,
think they'd struggle
Chris
to
Baker
shift
in the
players.
chat there, would we take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when Pep leaves? Yeah, absolutely, mate. He's a great guy. Love him. Fantastic manager. I hope that doesn't get clipped or taken out of context or whatever. Anyway, moving on. Brentford 0, Crystal Palace 0. And Cal, I know you're ready because you know what game's coming next, buddy boy. Brentford 0, Palace 0. Exactly.
Brentford getting sucked into relegation. Lucky not to. Was it the 95th minute? Palace had what could have been a really good chance, and it just didn't bounce right. And I think that would have really, really killed Brentford. But I think that's probably one of those games. Both gutted they didn't get 3 points.
Like, I don't know if you remember when Huddersfield were in the Prem. I know they stayed up in their first season, but coming to the end of their first season, everyone knew how to beat them. And then the second season, it fell apart. And that's starting to happen to Brentford. I think everyone knows how they're going to play now. And they're very easy to beat. And I know that sounds, or to get a point against. And I think, you look at some of the teams, they're dropping points too. They got beat by us, and we look how bad we've been this season. And we didn't just beat them, we scored 4 goals past them. And, yesterday Palace should have won. And I can see Brentford, if they keep losing, they're not going to be able to stay up, are they? Where they're going at the moment. They really need to get a few points on the board. And again, change that system up, because the media are making out that Thomas Frank's like Pep. But it's just not working. They're losing a lot of games and dropping silly points again.
Right, okay, I'm bored of these now. Let's get on to the drum roll. Everton 3, Leeds United 0, City legend, Super Frankie Lampard, Agent Lampard.
We are winning everything. That was just for Martin, by the way. I don't actually think we're going to win anything.
Well, you've got to win. Yeah. You've got to win in the Premier League, Cal.
Yes! Finally, after for a long time, a very long time, it's good.
And with
Chris
Baker, Leeds were robbed. No, tell us why you were worthy 3-0 winners at Goodison.
Because I'll tell you why. Because when we lost to Newcastle, there was a huge thing on social media about the fans don't give enough. The players don't give enough. We know that. But the fans have to take some responsibility. When the players there, we're not cheering them and we're always on their backs. They're just not going to be able to play and the confidence is low. And the minute that game started, our fans were cheering them players on. And then players felt that and it gave them confidence. We went off and we matched Leeds. The way Leeds play, we matched them. Just like yous did. And look how yous played against them. And we matched their attack. We matched their physicality. And we came out on top. We scored a good goal early on, good play. Second goal, good corner, and the third goal was brilliant from Richarlison. It was Anthony Gordon's goal, but it was brilliant play. And we defended well.
But Cal,
Leeds had no shots.
Cal, the problem that I have with Everton is that you've done that against Leeds, but I'm not convinced that you can get another win back to back. I mean, and you're not going to beat us either. Oh God, I don't know why I just said that. Cocky ass, Rob Campbell, but.
I think
it's back-to-back wins that do you more favours.
Yeah,
And then
I agree.
I look at you you're still in the FA Cup as well. And who've you got in the FA Cup? Sorry, remind me.
Boreham
Wood at Goodison Park. To me, if I was an Everton fan, that is like the biggest banana peel in your entire club's history. Do you know what I mean? I'm not quite confident yet. I think Frank Lampard's a decent enough manager. I think Frank Lampard will bring you stability over 3 years if you keep him for 3 years, because that's the big problem with Everton. You swap managers more than you swap boxers.
9 managers in like 7 years, is it now?
But that's still less than City, by the way. When in the 90s, City went through 6 interims and managers in about 3 weeks. So, you're not quite Shambles FC yet. But keep hold of Frank Lampard. Give him a chance. Give him some longevity. But I do see banana peels for you. I do still see banana peels for you.
I think, obviously, nothing's perfect. Nothing's changed. We still need to stay up and we still need to win games. Like, nothing's perfect. We just won a game, it's a confidence booster because we haven't won since early December. But I just want to say, Anthony Gordon, keep your eyes on this lad, because this season, when the chips, usually the young players can't just show how good they are when the team's playing bad. The chips are down for Everton, and he's the one who's always on the best every game. Him or Gray, and Gordon's been so good this season, and he's from Liverpool, and I'm so happy to see the way he's playing. But Donny van der Beek, for me, was the man of the match. Donny van der Beek, he was calm on the ball, he was physical, he was beating the Leeds midfield every time. He was quick, he was fast with the ball, good with the ball. He had a few nice chances. It was just a good day, and that's it. And you've said it, Robin, you've said it to me, Rich. Usually Everton, we make silly mistakes and we drop off. Everyone yesterday was at 8 out of 10, and that's perfect. But it's not how we did it yesterday. It's can we do it again next week and the week after and the week after.
That's what I'm saying.
We need to build on this.
I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but that's all I'm saying. Consistency.
I think it's getting the fans behind, the club as well. And I was reading, an Everton fan talk about it, saying that he thought Lampard had made more effort with the fans in the last 2 weeks than the previous 3 or 4 managers had made in 3 seasons, and that Lampard is really trying to, get in the club, but actually talk to the fans and get the fans going. And I think we're seeing that at Newcastle, to be honest. I think I've heard a bit more of a roar at St. James's than I've heard for many seasons. And I think getting the fans behind the club, in this sort of battle for an Everton or a Newcastle, will see them go through. And the clubs where the fans are just down in the dumps or they're not there, that just really takes away from the team. We'll know from City for years, Rob, how many times you've been at Main Road or at the Etihad when the fans are quiet and tense and there's nerves in the stadium, and that kind of comes out onto the pitch. And
I'm sorry, Rich. I spent most of the 90s drunk.
Yeah,
I've only ever read about City because I was paralytic for most of our shambles. City. Anyway, I just want a quick message from our sponsors here. I know a lot of people are disappointed to not see Martin tonight, but he is going through a lot of very personal family issues at the minute. His mum is... I wish his mum all the best, and I wish him all the best. He's going through it, the poor lad. He is the king of the waffle merchants. That'll never change. And I know how you all enjoy seeing Martin, and I know you all enjoy ribbing Martin and joking with him, but sometimes he thinks you're joking at him. But, the poor lad is going through a personal hell at the minute, so I wish him all the best, and I know that everyone who watches this show wishes him all the best too. So let's move on to Watford 0, Brighton 2. Brighton, with their manager, I tell you what, he's a good manager. He's a good manager.
I think, every season there's always a manager who, the media come up with as having had a better season than Pep Guardiola and how they should be manager of the year. It's normally a Sean Dyche or, David Moyes. I reckon this season there'll be calls for Potter to be manager of the year when they don't want to give it to Pep. Doing really well. It was another solid win, another solid performance. And what's amazed me about Brighton is that they've dropped a lot of points in games they could have won. And so I think they're a team whose league position actually is lower than some of their performances this year. And that is a real compliment, because for a team on like them on their budget and everything else, it's normally overachievement to be where they are. I think for them, it's underachievement.
That's one way of looking at it, Rich. Cal?
I think they've been great. So organised.
The amount of chances Brighton waste is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I agree. Graham Potter deserves so much credit. He's doing such a good job. And the style he's playing it's brave. And I know I said about Leeds, but he does change it up. And he has changed it up when they've needed to win games. And he's won another game. And you know what I mean? Let's be real. 3 years ago, no, like every season up until last season, we all said Brighton are going down this year. This will be the year. And they're staying up every year. And Potter's doing a great job. And I'm sure, I don't know who it's going to be, but he's destined for a Big Six club. The usual Big Six, in brackets, Big Six.
I have to add a big warning to that too, Graham Potter. And I know that Graham watches this show. He's an avid fan of it. Take your bloody time. Take your bloody time deciding what package is right for you, because I'm sick and tired of so many promising managers, and I'm looking at David Moyes mainly. David Moyes at Everton was incredible. David Moyes at West Ham right now is incredible. David Moyes at Manchester United was sold a kipper and pushed under the bus. Graham Potter, you have got so much goodwill in your bank right now. Don't blow it on a Liverpool or a Chelsea. Because you'll soon get chewed up, spat out, and forgotten about.
I see him going with Leicester, to be honest. If Brendan Rodgers gets sacked, I see Leicester going for him. But again, it's just so good the way they're playing. They're a great team, and I think everyone likes Brighton. I think you just can't hate Brighton.
I think the person who probably is feeling most sad about Brighton this season is probably Ronaldo, because if he'd signed for Brighton, they'd be sitting in third place at the minute.
Oh my God, Rich! Yes,
he'd be, I think he must be really regretting the fact that he didn't take the option of going to Brighton.
Yes, right. On to the most boring game of the day, the Raheem gets hatred for no reason Sterling show. Norwich City 0, Manchester City 4, clean sheet for City, 3 points for City, 4 goals scored for City away from home. I mean, if you've got complaints about that, then...
Do you know what, Rob? That was my happiest game since we beat Chelsea about 4 months ago at Stamford Bridge. It had everything I wanted. It had a rotation without a drop in form. It had some players who haven't had many games, like Zinchenko coming in and doing well. Foden looked back to himself and managed to...
No, he's getting there. He's not...
Yeah, but I thought the best thing was... He scored the scrappiest goal you'll ever see, but he still managed to nutmeg someone and do a Cruyff turn in that scrappy goal. Sterling, perfect hat-trick. And then 3 kids coming on, 3 players from the academy. Well, Keki's not really academy.
Where was Oscar Bob,
3 coming on. That's everything we want in a game.
Where was Oscar Bob?
Brilliant. Yeah, well, apart from Oscar Bob.
Exactly.
It was great.
I'm not interested if Oscar Bob's not playing. Yeah, Cal, did you see any highlights of this, mate?
Through ball to Delap to win a penalty. What more do we want?
Can I ask a question? Let me ask this question. Did Sterling fluff the penalty on purpose so we could get that perfect hat trick? I think he's good enough to have done that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Cal, did you catch any of this, mate?
Yeah, I watched the game. I watched after the first goal, because I went in the shop and then I came back and Sterling was jumping all over the floor and everyone was celebrating and I was like, oh, I've missed a goal. Anyway, yeah, but let's be real. That's what I say. Norwich played well, and I think that's just credit to how good you are as a team. You won 4-0 and Norwich played well, and that's not your best performance of late. That just proves how good you are as a club. 4-0 win and you didn't play well. For me, that just shows how good Manchester City are, in my opinion.
Cal. Thanks for the compliment, Cal.
Sterling's goals. Sterling's one of those players where he had one off year, and everyone jumped on his back. And you forget just how good someone is when they're playing bad. But the minute they're playing good, that's when you realise how good they are, and he's incredible. His goals, the amount of goals he scored for Manchester City is incredible. When you think he was a young lad playing for Liverpool, he had 2 decent years, not incredible, decent years at Liverpool. He's had a lot of, let's be real, he's had a lot of horrible things said about him in the media by certain newspapers.
Here, well said. Right, let's quickly... Rich, you've got another, 10 minutes before you've got to jump?
Yeah.
Right, so let's get through today's fixtures. We'll start at Turf Moor, Burnley 0, Liverpool 1. Why did Liverpool win this game? They didn't deserve to win this game. Burnley, you actually quite annoyed me by not taking something out of this point because your resilience should be there and it wasn't. Is this just another case of teams larping on, falling over themselves for mighty bin dipper FC?
Not really. I think it's just typical Burnley. They're like that or every game. They play well. They haven't really had many games where they've not played well. They just can't put the ball in the back of the net. And that's their problem. Yeah. They've not lost a lot of games. They've lost less games than most of the teams above them. It's just they can't win.
But they've won, one game this season? You can't, you've got to win.
It's very annoying.
8, 9, 10 games to stay up.
What do we say? Right, let's sit back and take Liverpool seriously for a second. Look, I'm looking at you, Jack Lee, and I'm looking at you, Chris Baker, and the rest of you waffle merchants in the chat. What can we say about Liverpool seriously? Because I hate them. I've got 58 agendas against them. I think they're the worst team in football history.
Facts.
But what can we say about them? Cop-outs are gobshites. But let's try for a minute and say something positive about Liverpool.
I think for me, it's not really the players and the manager and stuff that I hate. What I hate and what really bugs me is the delusion, and it's cult-like. It's like watching, Jim Jones.
Let's say something good about that. No, we're not talking about the Jim Jones massacre.
But I'm saying they're a good team. They play well. They are by far the second best team in the Premier League over the last 5 seasons, comfortably clear as the second best team. And they've got good players. They attack. No one can say Salah isn't a great player or that Jota's not been a great signing. I think the problem is that they are up there in the top 5, 6 sides in Europe. You can't deny it. They attack. They're entertaining, but they're just not as good as their fans think they are, and that's what bugs everyone, because no one wants to hear about how they've got the best centre back, the best right back, the best left back, the best defensive.
Oh, the hype machine is ridiculous, yeah.
And honestly, if they didn't have that kind of propaganda North Korean hype,
but
machine,
Rich,
I think everyone would like them a lot more.
It was almost funny a couple of weeks ago. When Steven Gerrard returned as a manager in the Premier League, the heads almost exploded because obviously Jurgen Klopp's the greatest manager ever.
Yeah.
But Steven Gerrard is the greatest manager ever as well, and the heads almost couldn't handle two world-class managers being in the Premier League that they have equal love for. I think Jurgen Klopp, though, is about 1 or 2 seasons from being thrown under the bus like Karius. I really do.
Well, no, I think he's a Pep Guardiola renewal from leaving the Premier League to go and manage PSG.
Yeah, probably. Jack Lee, I'm with you, mate. I am absolutely with Jack Lee. There's one positive about Liverpool. They're not United or Tottenham. Facts. Cop-outs are gobshites.
Liverpool.
Well, Rich, come on, Rich. Club. You sent me a message saying, "Oh, you want to be out of here by 5 past." Let's move. We've got 3 more games, mate. We can. You can do a Rich rants coming this week, ladies and gentlemen. A Rich rants all about Liverpool, the Champions League, and all that waffle. Rich is going to be cheeked. He's red cheeks, and he's going to be throwing golf clubs into lakes. Newcastle United 1, Aston Villa 0.
Very, very good win.
Yeah,
Well, the best team in the Midlands has lost.
Again, Villa have Steven Gerrard as manager, and we all hate Steven Gerrard because he's a knob. But yeah, fair play to Newcastle. They've won again, and they're winning games of football, which is what you've got to do to stay up. And to be honest, it was a brilliant goal by Trippier. It was deflected, but it was still a good goal. He's really making a difference. He's still proving that he's still one of the top fullbacks in the world, but he's injured, and we need to see how they can bounce back from that injury. But yeah, Alan St-Maximin is horrible for teams to defend against. I think Newcastle might actually stay up. And I think Villa are very lucky that they had a little spell under Gerrard when he first came in. Because if they never had that little bounce, they would be right in the mix where we are, and Leeds, in my opinion.
Yep. Aston Villa, Wheels, they got a draw, then they lost.
Yeah. Newcastle have got the fans going again, and I think that actually will be quite a big help to them in the next couple of months.
You know what? I want Jack Lee on this channel so badly. Gerrard is a goblin. I agree with Jack Lee. You are my hero, mate.
Why are you disrespecting goblins?
Right, let's move on. Let's move on to Tottenham Bottlespershire. 0-0. They scored no goals against Wolverhampton Wanderers at the Cheese Stadium.
Yeah.
They lost at home against Wolves. Tottenham Hotspur really do want to be a mid-table club with the best cheese in football.
Yeah, I hear they had a really good artisan Wensleydale available though.
Cheese has moved,
which
Rich.
with some dried muscatel grapes really had the fans bouncing before the game. Fantastic, beautiful, real tart cheese. The sweetness of the muscatel grapes, that was the best thing about Spurs this week. I mean, I'd love to have been inside Conte's head watching them their defending and goalkeeping. It was just hilarious.
Well, Cal, you are a big fan of Conte. You think he's the greatest manager to ever grace a touchline. So why don't you tell us about what Conte loses games?
I think Conte is a brilliant manager, but I think he said it today perfect. This is not what he's used to. He's used to coming into clubs and it working straight away. I think Tottenham are a lot worse than people just expected. And everyone was so fast to jump on Mourinho's back. When you look at it, he was actually not doing that bad of a job. He got them into a final. They were in the top 7, top 8. They weren't doing that bad of a job. He wasn't actually doing a bad job at Tottenham.
Well, are Tottenham going to come to the Etihad and rock up and smash us? By the way, Daddy Beaver, before you answer that question, I had a Wensleydale, salted caramel Wensleydale, and it was delicious. Anyway,
I think Tottenham are exactly like United. They're entirely run for off the pitch reasons, and the actual football is secondary. Tottenham have put fast beer, cheese, and a nice shiny stadium above managers, players, and a team, exactly like United. And they try and run as an entertainment and restaurant business, and the football's just stuck on the side. And that's not, you don't succeed in football unless football is central to your project.
They invested at the wrong time. They should have invested. Oh, sorry.
But Rich.
Yes.
It's Tottenham.
Facts. They just bottle it. They should have invested the season. Pochettino got them to the final of the Champions League. They should have went out the season after and invested.
It's Tottenham. Come on, lads. It's Tottenham. Right, anyway, last game of the weekend. I'll give you a little brief one of this because I watched this game. Leicester at home 2, West Ham 2. West Ham were a bit wobbly, but they still went away from home and got a point. I will admit that I am quite disappointed that West Ham didn't take all 3 points. Leicester certainly didn't dominate this game. Apparently the media wants us to believe that Leicester dominated the game. They certainly didn't. And I think if the game would have gone on for another 5-10 minutes, West Ham would have won it 3-2. But all in all, as a West Ham United fan, I am disappointed.
My favourite player of all time, the greatest midfielder ever, Declan Rice, was good. I thought he was very good today because he is the greatest midfielder to ever exist. Just for Martin, he is incredible. And up David Moyes, and we don't like Leicester because Brendan Rodgers, again, just like Steven Gerrard, is a knob.
Big facts. Rich, final thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I think West Ham, I'm glad they got back and got the point. I want them to get that 4th place. So let's hope they keep going. I think the one thing I saw in the fixtures, just one final thing to mention, which will be absolutely fascinating, is Brentford play Arsenal away this week. They then play Newcastle, Norwich and Burnley in their next 3 games. So that's going to be 3 really exciting 6-pointers coming up, which will have a big influence. I'm now thinking that the worst thing possible could happen and Martin and me might both be right, and Newcastle and Norwich might both stay up.
Maybe. Just to, I mean, the chat are already not talking about football anymore. Just want you to let you know, chat, I had a seared fillet steak once with a Stilton crust, and it was the most incredible thing I've ever eaten in my life. That's the Premier League for this week. On the channel this week, we have got Champions League football, Rich Rants, Thursday Night Waffle House, and we're going to talk about how much Tottenham are shite. Bye, everybody. Bye, Rich. Bye, Cal.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Gobshites.
Copites are gobshites. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have a
Thank you,
lot of fun.
everyone.
And again, best wishes to Martin because he's going through a tough time. See you later, everybody.
See ya.